right. Welcome, everyone. We are just going to give people about another minute to join, and then we will get started. Well, I think we'll begin now, Sally. Welcome, and everyone, thank you for joining us today for this important conversation on a topic that we haven't spent that much time talking with our visitors about, but we are really excited to share the information with you today. So welcome to our visiting vignette. Today, I'm joined by Sally Cox. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about Sally's background, but also just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Alexion because through their generous educational grant, it's allowed us to bring this education to you. And just to introduce myself, I'm Mandy Sandcooler, the Director of Partnerships and Communications here at Mended Hearts. And a big thank you. And I'm just going to stop there and stop share, and we are going to go on Spotlight because this is really a conversation between Sally and I so that you can learn a little bit more about Sally's background, what she's been through, and how her experience can help benefit you and the patients and families you're interacting with. So a little bit of background on Sally. After nearly drowning in 2018 due to a pulmonary edema caused by heart failure, Sally learned the hard way that she not only had a heart problem, but she had a life-threatening disease called AL amyloidosis. At the time, she was told she had 6 months to live and that treatment options were limited. And at this time, she also was able to enroll in a clinical trial for which there was no FDA-approved treatment, but Sally went through it anyway. Flash forward now to 2025, and Sally is happily maintaining the remission that she achieved while first participating in that trial. So it has a happy ending, the story that started pretty upsetting back in 2018. But this trial that she went through, it's the first approved treatment for AL cardiac amyloidosis. And not only does she have this rare disease, but this is crazy, she was also diagnosed at the same time as her sister-in-law was diagnosed with AL amyloidosis. So 2 close family members, not related by blood, both were diagnosed with this rare disease. So it really has had a big impact on her life. At the time, she received a positive Congo stain biopsy following a surgery for carpal tunnel. And that's how, Sally will tell you about how the diagnosis journey goes, but that's how it was first discovered, what she had. So both Sally and her sister-in-law are doing well now relatively and working on raising awareness of this disease that is more rare than a lot that we come across at Mended Hearts, but is actually becoming more and more diagnosed these days. Sally is currently the facilitator for the Pacific Northwest Amyloidosis Support Group, and she really helps to navigate for others that journey. So she serves as a support system, like so many of our Mended Hearts leaders and visitors do, for others who are living with and diagnosed with cardiac amyloidosis. And she's very passionate about educating and advocating for increased awareness so that people can get diagnosed early before damage is done. And so I'm going to stop there. And Sally, I'm going to start with a question to you. Do you want to tell us briefly about yourself and your experience with the disease AL amyloidosis?
Yes, thank you, Mandy, very much for this opportunity. I think it's just wonderful that Mended Hearts has championed the amyloidosis cause because we certainly do need help with raising awareness. So heartfelt thanks to all of you and your team for putting together this. And also I'd like to thank you for the wonderful Mended Hearts feature article you had in the publication this month. That was really nice of you to do in partnership with us. That was a featured article on AL amyloidosis. If you go to the Mended Hearts website, the publication's called Heartbeat, and it's filled with all sorts of wonderful tidbits. And they also did a wonderful 4-page spread on AL amyloidosis, I believe in coinciding with the Global Amyloidosis Awareness Day, which is this weekend on the 26th of October. So thank you, Mandy, and the team very, very much. Just in brief, I'm not a doctor, I'm a patient, and fortunately, I live to tell the story. Mandy did a nice job presenting. I was very surprised when I was out snorkeling. I do have to admit that I ignored some of the symptoms. We had what we call a constellation of symptoms happening in the amyloidosis world, And none of them can really be put together logically, except by very experienced doctors who know what to look for in that bilateral carpal tunnel and spinal stenosis and weird skin disease and inflammation, and not necessarily skin disease, but weird things happen to your skin in terms of bruising, of foamy urine. If your kidneys get impacted, your urine will get foamy. It's just a systemic disease that can really land anywhere in your body. And doctors are as puzzled by it as you are as a patient because it just hasn't been recognized up until recently. And there really were no good effective therapies up until recently. So it was really a disease that was, I would say, somewhat swept under the rug by the medical institutions because they didn't have really great effective therapies for people. So we didn't want to diagnose people, is my perception of what happened. Well, flash forward about 6 years ago, there was some research came to fruition. I was fortunate enough from that Hawaii experience where I sank snorkeling. Ironically, that doctor in Hawaii told me to have a good time and see a cardiologist when I got home back to Seattle. Did more research on why the heck would I sink snorkeling when I go to spin class 5 days a week. I go to yoga 4 days a week. I walk. I love exercising, passionate about doing things and being active. So in my mind, I was the last person that should have a heart problem. So it certainly didn't ring any bells in my mind that I had a heart problem. And I sank snorkeling because of it. I had irregular EKGs, the bilateral carpal tunnel. Unfortunately, it took a total of 8 cardiologists to get me on the right path for my treatment. And fortunately, it did work. I was in, as Mandy mentioned, a clinical trial. And this was the first trial where they were trying to get a drug approved for treating amyloidosis. Up until recently, amyloidosis has been treated very similar to multiple myeloma as a sister or a distant cousin in terms of a disease. The difference is with AL amyloidosis, it isn't a cancer. It's actually a proliferation of proteins that come out of your bone marrow. And so your bone marrow has this activation, and there's these bogus proteins that come out and misfold. They're like sticky little widgets that get stuck all over your body. Part of the reason it starts, carpal tunnel, they say, shows 4 to 5 years before any of the other potential impact on your organs, such as your heart or your kidneys. So carpal tunnel is really what I call a red flag symptom, a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, especially bilateral carpal tunnel. There's very, very few occupational reasons for people to have bilateral carpal tunnel bother them repeatedly. And let me just say, if you've had repeated procedures for carpal tunnel, that is also a red flag. And I would highly recommend that you get a biopsy done when you do go in for carpal tunnel treatment. It's a very simple biopsy called a Congo red stain. And that definitely is the definitive test for deciding if you have AL amyloidosis or not. Ironically, when I was in Hawaii, they just thought I was a tourist who didn't know how to swim. There was really no association put to a heart failure. I have come to learn, and I would like to share this with people today as a public service announcement, that our lungs get compromised. Everybody's lungs get compromised up at altitude when you're flying in airplanes. Well, I learned that that long flight to Hawaii actually pressed my alveola into the lungs into a position where they didn't oxygenate. And you should wait for a few days before you enter the water. And this is something that the Hawaii Inc. doesn't like to promote because they want people to get in the water right away and go snorkeling. But the reality is because of that pressurization change, anybody with a heart problem should really take time and acclimate once you arrive at a distant location. So that's kind of my PSA about traveling,
Very helpful.
getting in the water. So I'm full of little
Very helpful. Thank you.
living to tell the story, so to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something we can pass along to any of our members, really.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So Sally, with your work through the Seattle group and beyond just the whole Northwest area, you must hear a lot of stories about those barriers to care that you kind of touched on and talked about briefly. In terms of there being, different symptoms or really the bilateral carpal tunnel coming early on, right? And then people not recognizing it's related to their heart. So, what are some of the other barriers that you hear about when people call and looking for support?
Yeah, I think probably the primary barrier is lack of awareness completely across the health industry. Very, very little understanding of the disease. There may be awareness of it, but understanding is another thing. So I end up having patients where people call me that are in various stages of diagnosis. They've had this test that's abnormal, but this other test wasn't abnormal. Their doctor doesn't know what to do. Quite often, there's some confidence crisis in the care that they're receiving, and they're looking for some advice on who might know more about amyloidosis and where they can go to get some more specific help. And that's when centers of excellence come into play. That's something that I had never even heard of until I caught amyloidosis and determined that I really needed some expert help. And lo and behold, there's the concept of a center of excellence in amyloidosis. And those are institutions that actually have set up amyloidosis clinics within their institution. So it's a comprehensive, specialized group that deals with all of the downstream problems that come along with AL amyloidosis or ATTR amyloidosis as well. So that's
Okay.
the really key thing is finding somebody who can give you a comprehensive workup to make sure that it's properly differentiated. There is another type of amyloidosis called ATTR, and that one is actually a protein that's comes out of the liver. It's a DNA expression out of the liver that misdirected, and that's another type of amyloidosis called ATTR. Also is widely underdiagnosed, and it's something that, interesting enough, on the ATTR side, they say there's genetic components that actually, unfortunately, impact the people of color population to the tune of 4% carry a genetic predisposition to ATTR amyloidosis. But AL amyloidosis is not genetic at this point. They have said that one reason they have definitely attributed AL to is Agent Orange, and Vietnam vets have they have a profound, unfortunate, and it's because it was a nerve agent gas. It's often in the nerves, so throughout the GI system. So it's unfortunate, a systemic disease that's very hard to find one doctor that can help you with all the different things, whether it's your heart, your liver, your skin, your stomach. It's quite a challenge to have that many specialists and be able to roll them up into one easy place. And that's why I strongly recommend that people, if you can, try to make it to a center of excellence. And there's resources out there that can help you do that. I'd be happy to do that as well. So that's one of the big things. The other thing I want to make sure, Mandy, is that people get information about clinical trial opportunities, because what happens in the AL space, and there aren't that many trials, but there are trials out there, including a depleter trial right now for that would be removing amyloid from your organs, and that's available for people that have kidney involvement with AL amyloidosis. But so the clinical trial aspect of care is very important because this is such a new disease for treatment. It's no one size fits all. Every single patient is different. The way the disease manifests itself in the person is different. So you really need to find a doctor who has seen a variety of patients. So when you ask your doctor if they have experience with amyloidosis, then also ask them how many patients they've worked with that have had amyloidosis is also a very important question, because that natural history, what patients have experienced, is critically important to your care and making sure that you receive the proper care. And I think that's a great segue for support groups, Mandy, like Mended Hearts. And that a lot of times doctors don't have the time they need to explain everything in completely to you. So I've found that support groups have been very, very effective in filling in the blanks for me in terms of information about clinical trials and other people that are struggling through similar things. So I'd say that was probably the one of the biggest challenges was just getting doctors to diagnose us right and then come up with a plan. Unfortunately, the clinical trial I was in, I received the placebo arm, but it was the standard of care, which they call it in an open trial. So this was phase 3, which means it's been through the safety phases and the efficacy and the dosing. Now they're trying to see how this stuff really, and does it work and how long does it work. So this was phase 3, open label, I found out on a Friday night that I got the short straw and I was going to get effectively the placebo, but it was a chemotherapy regime, a cyborg without the daratumumab. Fortunately, I responded. I freaked out. I told my doctor, I don't want it. No, I didn't freak out about responding. I freaked out because I got the short end of the stick. But he assured me, and this is the thing about having a doctor that you trust. My doctor assured me that he would watch my back. And if I was failing in the trial, he would take me out of it and I wouldn't have to stay in it. So that's something really important for people to know, that the doctors are always looking out for your best interest, even if you are in a clinical trial. And part of the benefit of the trial is they follow you closer than any doctor normally would. You get appointments either weekly, monthly, they follow you. I was followed for 5 years in my trial. So they really like to, and it's pretty cool that they follow you that long to prove that Sally lived and so many other people lived to tell the story. So I'm a big advocate of clinical trials. And the irony about my sister-in-law was we actually diagnosed her over dinner when she said to me, I got a really weird biopsy thing and nobody called me back. It was called something about a river, like Congo Red. And I was like, Ethel, you have to be kidding. That's, you don't want to have a positive Congo Red because that's what I got. Sure enough, she has AL amyloidosis. We caught hers early at the carpal tunnel stage before it attacked her organs. So fortunately, she did not have cardiac or kidney issues. So Ethel just finished up her 2-year regime. So the daratumumab was approved in the AL space. That's the first and only approved drug by the FDA. And it's working very, very well for people. So I'm quite excited about that. And I have it in my back pocket because I got the placebo. If it was, I fall out of my remission, I'll have the benefit of being able to use the drug that I was in the trial for. So
Amazing.
that's kind of fun too. But I never
Yeah.
thought that I would, let alone know somebody that would benefit from the trial. But then it would be my sister-in-law. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I am a
Yeah.
believer that this is not such a rare disease. It's a rarely diagnosed correctly disease, is what I believe. So,
Truly. And now that there is a therapy, hopefully doctors will take that extra step to make the diagnosis.
mhm. Yep.
So it's interesting, look, comparing your journey with Ethel's as someone who was diagnosed earlier. What does it look like for someone like you if you weren't in remission? So what are some of the challenges that a person living with AL face, at this stage, or like what would Ethel face at her stage? What does that journey look like?
Right. Well, for myself, I get my labs. One thing you will with AL amyloidosis, because it is a medical emergency and because there is no cure, everybody please track your labs carefully. I track mine every 3 months. Seems to be a common theme among hematologists. And that's important to note too. We aren't actually followed by cardiologists as our primary care doctor. We're followed by hematologist, and cardiologist is somewhat of a secondary doctor for us. The theory being they need to get the expression of amyloid shut down, and then we'll worry about the heart, and the heart will get better by itself if we can stop the amyloidosis. So that's the key thing, is people getting in therapy that works. You want to make sure that you've discerned whether you have AL or ATTR and or both. Unfortunately, some rare occasions people have both AL and ATTR. So that's a very, very important. I do have what I call the diagnostic algorithm, which is complicated, and I give this to my patients, people in the group all the time, to take to the doctor and say, have you done all these tests on my diagnostic algorithm to prove definitively if I have AL amyloidosis or not? And then if you do, you want to make sure that you have all of the opportunities presented to you in terms of what trials might be available. Because there are things happening in the trial space right now that are looking very, very promising. So we definitely want to have a center of excellence or a doctor that at least knows what trials are available, preferably as you determine what treatment you're going to be starting, because you may be a candidate for CRISPR, which is gene editing. You may be a candidate for CAR T, which is another type of cell manipulation, gene editing. There's a variety of options out there now in trial space, and that's something that I'm really a big fan of promoting. So, as well
Okay.
as the drug that's working, which is daratumumab. So people are on Dara, and because the trial was written for 2 years, to take it for 2 years, that's what people have been doing, is taking it for 2 years. Then it becomes a question, what happens if I stop it? Will I go go back? Will my disease come back? So that's a big question mark, and doctors are unable to give you an answer on that one. They don't know, and you don't know. So you have to make a difficult decision at whatever stage you are in your therapy is, and I had to make it too. At 6 months, did I want to stop and take a risk that it would come back? Or did I want to continue doing what they called maintenance therapy, which was continuing on chemotherapy? And they have a theory, what they call under the iceberg. And what the ice that's under the water of an iceberg is the stuff you really got to worry about. So they think if you knock the bone marrow activity down, that's going to help keep the disease under control, but they just don't know what causes it to flare up again. And then that gets back to the importance of continuing to monitor. So some people choose to go on maintenance. I did not go on maintenance, and I got lucky, very, very lucky. You hear me knocking on wood. That's, but of course that I'm watching my labs closely because of that. There are also some people, there's a genetic twist to a lot of diagnostics plots called a T1114. And people, please make sure you have asked your doctor if you have that translocation, they call it. It's a gene that is in a position that it doesn't make it blocks the daratumumab from being as effective as it could be, is an easy way to put it. So make sure your doctors check for that T1114. If you have a T1114, Dara may work for you a little bit and it'll get your numbers down, but it probably is not going to get you down to where you need to be, and you won't be able to stay there on daratumumab if you have this translocation. So there's a better drug option for you, and that's what people should technically, with the consulting of their doctors, potentially start with rather than Dara. And there's a drug called Venetoclax. So there's a lot of nuances involved with the disease that it just is critically important that people talk to a doctor that knows a lot about it. Second opinions, very important. I don't know, Mandy, if you know that some people are kind of worried about going and getting a second opinion. Like, will their doctor get mad because I went to the Mayo
Right.
Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota? And does he feel like I don't trust him? Well, the first answer would be, who cares? But
Yeah.
that's not the reality. We all care what our doctors think about us. But the reality is that if the doctor is truly a caring doctor, he'll welcome, or he or she will welcome more information, and also the expertise and directions that would come from a center of excellence.
Yeah.
So if you go for a consult, let's say to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester is my number one go-to recommendation. They can work you up in just a few days. They get you in within a month to 6 weeks, you get into their amyloidosis clinic, and they'll do a complete workup depending on what your symptoms and your challenges are. And then that Mayo Clinic visit can serve as the platform for what your care plan will be. And you take that care plan back to your local doctor, who in turn
Okay.
works hand in hand with your center of excellence doctor. So it turns out to be a wonderful relationship because the local doctor learns about the disease. The Mayo Clinic doesn't have to see you all the time, and you're having the best of both worlds, and that you don't have to travel back and forth. So if you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to make that trip once, it is very beneficial in my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, in all of our shared decision-making documents, we always advocate for a second or third opinion if that's what makes you comfortable. I think what one of the issues is for people, and especially when they're trying to reach these centers of excellence, is that they may not have the option of getting a second or third opinion because of insurance issues or the cost of health care. So is that something, and Sally, we've got, I think, about 6 minutes left. That'll put us at the half hour, and we've got a lot
Oh
of
gosh.
questions. But
Okay.
do you want to, before we get to some questions, ask you about what kind of work you're doing at your organization? And, do you give insurance help, or what kind of, just how are you helping this community?
Right. It really a kind of a conduit for resources. I know a little bit about a lot of things. Certainly not a doctor, but can give patients the tools that they need to have an intelligent conversation with their doctor. Also help them find alternatives if they don't have a good care situation. The other thing I'm working on is raising awareness. So thank you, Mandy, for this opportunity. I've actually gone out and made myself a business card, and it's the Pacific Northwest Amyloidosis Support Group. And then on the back, I've got all of the symptoms that go with amyloidosis. So
Love that.
just a little, and dentist, doctor, anybody, I'm giving this to because they probably know somebody with carpal tunnel and
Yeah. Yeah.
bilateral carpal tunnel with a heart problem. And those are the red flags. And I've also made some little postcards that people I've left at different doctors' offices throughout town.
Great.
Because we're Pacific Northwest oriented, a lot of our group meetings are done by Zoom because people geography is spread out. So we have roundtable conversations. People just share tips and tricks. It's a general resources access is the key thing. So
That's great. And I know, Sally, you're a member of one of our support groups as well. And you've certainly helped us on our connections page. And really, this is, I think, the relationship between our two organizations is how you raise awareness and you beat back and confront conditions like AL. So, so happy to have this partnership with you.
thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I'm just going to go to the chat. I had seen a couple come through. Um, Based on your experience working with patients in your group, where are the greatest needs these patients are facing? What are the greatest needs they're facing with their medical needs? And how does being in a support group help them with finding ways to have these needs met?
I think probably the toughest part is access to cardiologists. Most people only see their cardiologist once a year. And amyloidosis, you have problems year round typically. And so it's finding somebody to help you with your year-round challenges, I think is really the critical thing.
Okay, thank you. Another gentleman asked, other than the carpal tunnel, the bilateral, what are are there other early symptoms or signs?
Yeah, spinal stenosis is certainly one of trigger finger. We have people that have had like 10 trigger finger surgeries, a just crazy amount of repetitive surgeries on spinal stenosis, carpal tunnel, trigger finger, swelling, shortness of breath. I had AFib, but I called it palpitations because I didn't know what AFib was. That was another symptom I kind of sweat in. And of course, I described it to doctors, they were like, ah, menopause or middle age, don't worry about it, it'll pass. So,
And right, many women, poo-poo their symptoms and put it to menopause or perimenopause or whatever
yeah.
it may be. Yeah. And you had talked, about the fact that your first line is not a cardiologist, right? It's a cancer treatment. And so Joel was asking, what is that correlation between, this isn't cancer, but it's treated like cancer. Can you kind of clarify that relationship?
Yeah, it's because it's a bone marrow disorder and it's generated out of your bones. That's how you end up in hematology because that's a blood plasma cell disorder, is what they call it. And it's
Okay.
plasma cell proliferation that causes multiple myeloma and it also causes AL amyloidosis. Multiple myeloma, I'm not an expert at it, but my understanding, cancer cells split and proliferate because they're splitting. Amyloidosis is just sticky and clumping, and then the ATTR stuff falls apart and sticks, and so does the AL falls apart and sticks. So I
Okay.
think that's probably the primary.
The biggest. Okay. A lot of questions. This is a good one. The clinical trials you're talking about, should you be speaking with your hematologist about that or your cardiologist or both? About
Both.
available? Both.
Both, but
Okay.
actually in the AL space, it's usually hematology driven. Excuse me, Mandy, it is hematology driven.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but an ATTR, because ATTR is not a blood disorder, ATTR people are primary person is cardiology.
Right. Okay. And you support
That's
both
confusing.
groups of
Yeah.
patients with your support group. That's important to note also.
Yeah, absolutely. The ATTR
Yeah.
space is really growing. You guys are definitely not alone.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work to educate folks in the ATTR space as well. So
Great, thank
um,
you.
we're pretty much at time. Sally, I want to give you 1 minute just to say any last thoughts.
Well, that's a crazy thing to ask me to say. I'm so happy to be alive.
1 minute.
1 minute, I'm really happy to be alive. Seriously, you guys, I didn't think I had a chance 6 years ago. It was pretty dire. And it was thanks to support groups, in all honesty, that really helped me turn the corner, find the right doctors, the care I needed, talk to other kindred spirits who understood what I was going through. I can't say enough good things about what you can learn from other patients. Doctors are great, but the engagement with other patients and the networking opportunities with other patients is just really, I think, a very important part of wellness. So there aren't a lot of amyloidosis support groups localized like I've done. We do have some on the West Coast, California. There's some very active people in Northern California. We've got, I believe there's a gal in Nashville that's got a group going there. So I would just say if anybody's feeling like feel like you want a support group in your region, go for it. It just
Great
takes a couple people,
advice. Great
just take
advice.
a couple people who care and want to talk to each other, and you'd be surprised at how much energy comes from, and positive energy comes from meeting other
Oh,
people.
yeah, very much so. And Sally, one question, where do we reach you? Where do folks get in touch with you? Oh, Tammy just put it into
Oh,
the
thank
chat.
you.
So folks, jot that down while you can before we close this up.
It's a
But
mouthful.
Sally, many thanks for being on today and for sharing your story and for all you do. And
Well,
to
thank you.
everyone, thanks for making the time for being on.
Thank
Um,
you. Take care. If
thank
there's
you.
any questions, I'm happy to help people and happy to answer questions offline. So I'm here
Perfect.
for you, and I care.
You're caring, and don't forget, check out, if you want more of Sally's story, check out that heartbeat article that's online on our main www.mendedhearts.org right now. So
Good plug.
all right,
All
thank you
right. Take care,
everyone.
everyone.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.